And we really do mean it when we say friends. We are so excited to be launching a brand new podcast series today, Friendship for Real Women.
We know that we're created for community, but so many of us are struggling to experience abundance in our relationships. And we want to talk about why.
We're praying these episodes leave you encouraged and feeling equipped to actually enjoy your relationships a little bit more.
Listen in, maybe even tell a friend about this series, and let's see what God might do in our relationship as we dig in.
Hey friends, and I do mean friends because you all are my friends and we're so thankful you're here listening to the Go and Tell Gals podcast. I want to just set up today's episode with this, that my husband asks me every time I'm recording a podcast episode. He says, who are you talking to? And I'm going to be honest with you, the question annoys me because he doesn't know most of the time who I'm going to say. And so it doesn't matter. But today I said, well, I'm talking to my friendship coach, Danielle, and he knew exactly who I was talking to because I consider Danielle my personal friendship coach from the internet. He said, do you just ask her a million questions in her DMs? And I was like, I try to hold back, but I have so many that I want to ask today on the podcast because I think that friendship coaching is the most genius idea and what so many women need. Danielle, thank you so much for being here. We're so happy to have you.
Oh, I'm happy to be here, and I thank you for allowing me to lend my voice to the conversation.
Listen, we're grateful you're leading the conversation, and here's what I want to say on the front end. So for anyone listening who might think like friendship coaching, is that needed? Is it necessary? I don't know. I just don't even know how to respond. Yes, it is. Yes. And there are so many things that I find myself wanting to talk to you about, which is why I'm massively grateful for your platform and also that you have a book coming out, all of the things. But I want to talk about how to do friendship breakups well, because Lord have mercy. That is an actual part of our lives. That is an actual real part of our lives. We need to know how to do it in a life-giving and healthy way. I want to talk about how to be more available and how to be more present for my friends. The one time you shared a tip on Instagram about scheduling in your calendar times to check on your friends revolutionized my life because I schedule everything. Why wouldn't I schedule times to check in on my friends so I can be more present? I'm so incredibly grateful, but I guess I want to start with, how did you get into this work?
Yeah, so I always make the joke that it certainly wasn't on my vision board when I was 8, like I'm going to be a friendship coach. I kind of fell into it. So I was a high school teacher for 6 years, and I heard, the young women talking between classes and after class, they'd come up and want to talk about something with their friends. And so I made the foolish mistake when I left the classroom of thinking I left all that drama behind, because then I got into public relations and I was like, okay, I'm working with very serious, very high-powered women. They've got it together. And then here they are also confessing to having issues with friends. Maybe they're prioritizing career so much, they put it on the back burner, or they became a new mom and they look up and they're like, where did my village go? And so that's when I had the moment of, oh, this is like a thing. At every season of womanhood, we're trying to figure out, how do I get this right? And so I remember it very clearly. It was like 2 a.m. I was on Amazon, should have been asleep, had no business being up. I was on Amazon. I looked up friendship books. I was just curious. I'm like, is there anything on this? And at the time, there were very few results, and the ones that came up were for children. And I thought, oh, is this what we think of friendship? That it would be something kids need help with, but not women. And that's kind of when it started, the whole obsession, really, of trying to figure out, how can I serve in this space? Is this a thing? Is there a blueprint? And at the time, and still, there really wasn't. But now it's really grown, and people are starting to get familiar with what it is. And so far, it's been a really fun journey.
I feel like I've confess this to you in a DM. Maybe I haven't. If I haven't, I'm telling you this now. And I've definitely talked about it on the podcast that You Were the Girl for the Job, my book that came out in 2019, was supposed to be a book on friendship. I wrote the book in 2018, and it was slated to be a book on friendship. But weeks before my publishing deadline, I emailed my editor and said, all my friendships just fell apart. I have no business writing a book on friendship. I will not do it. But it was going to be a book on friendship. I just thought, I'm thriving. I have such great friendships. Everything's going great. I should absolutely give people wisdom on this. And then genuinely had some like really intense friendship issues. And then I was like, never mind. I'm never writing another book on friendship. I'm never going to talk about this ever again. It's just such a real struggle. And so the piece that feels so important to me, and why I'm so thankful you use your expertise here and your vulnerability and your wisdom, is because I think that so many women believe that everybody else has it figured out and that they're the only ones that miss the lesson. Does that feel real? Do you hear that a lot?
Yes, if I had $1 for every time a coaching session started with, oh my gosh, I can't believe can't believe I'm talking to a friendship coach. Like there's such embarrassment and shame around having to get help for something that should be so easy, that seemingly is so simple for everybody around us. So what's wrong with me? And we're still grappling with, even the women who buy in and sign up for a session are still like, okay, am I really doing this? And what does it say about me that I have to get help with something that should be so natural for a woman? So I totally agree that looking around and seeing other women in relationships that look like they're thriving can be something that's difficult.
That's interesting because you brought up a really interesting point that I was thinking about in regard to the fact that we are women and we are created, right? More so, I think, than men for relationship and connection. And so I think that definitely brings some shame when you think it'd be like, I mean, being very sensitive, but like for a woman who maybe is having trouble conceiving or something like that, right? It's like, my body's actually made for this, or I'm made for this. Why am I having so much trouble actually succeeding in this area? I'm so curious about why you think it is, outside of what we just mentioned or what I just mentioned. It's maybe so difficult sometimes for us. I can speak from my own personal experience. It's just as Jess. I'm 42. I've had so many relationships come and go over the past few years. And then obviously with COVID, I'm assuming maybe your business has picked up even more probably over COVID, because all of these things are starting to come out of the woodworks and all of these things that we maybe hid and everything. But why do you think it is that we struggle so much in this area? Like, what would you say there's like this one thing or this one area that you're seeing more often where women are struggling in this area of friendship?
I think we're struggling with friendship in general because, one, there aren't really many resources that lay it out, because I wonder if the extent of the public dialogue on friendship is you either have friends or you don't. And if you don't, what's wrong with you? And that's it. And I think as women, I'm speculating here, but I think it speaks so much to our likability or perceived likability. The girl who's got a bunch of friends, I mean, she seems awesome. And the girl who's like, I have no friends, we're like, what's wrong with her? So it speaks to how likable we are and how fun and interesting we are if you've got a gaggle of girls behind you. And so if you don't have that, what are the inadequacies? What are you not doing right? What about you is, why aren't you attracting other people? And so I think to announce, man, I'm struggling in my existing friendships, or I'm struggling to make friends, feels like you're confessing to something else that's wrong. So I think as much as we can make it normal that, like, yeah, being a woman in this world and needing a squad, needing some women to champion you and surround you is necessary. And it's possible to have those thriving friendships, but it takes work and no one's really laid it out. I think there's also the idea that, when you're a young person, it's almost your job. We tell kids, all right, go make some friends today. Like that's your only job when you're young. And then somewhere along the way, we assume you've got it figured out. And so I think it's something maybe we're grappling with behind the scenes on our own. And so I think women are starting to see that it's normal and it takes work, and it's something you're going to have to continually figure out and work at like anything else along the way.
That's really interesting. How do we define friendship? When you're in your coaching sessions with the women that you're coaching, is that something that you all start with? Do you start with that, defining what friendship even means to the women that you're coaching? Or I think seasonally for me, that definition probably changes, or definitely has changed since I was a 15-year-old girl versus a 40-year-old woman.
Oh, that's so true. I love that you're speaking to how your own definition kind of evolves as you get older and get some experience under your belt. It's actually one of the first things I like to ask because I feel like we solve so many issues right there. We're all using the same language and walking around here having a conversation and we're talking about different things. And so whenever a woman's talking about, my friends don't initiate enough and she doesn't do this enough, I don't feel seen, and when we get to like, okay, so what is the expectation? What do you expect that friendship should offer you? Woo, when I tell you like the range of responses back to that. So let's start there. Are the expectations you have of friendship itself problematic? And therefore, you will always experience great disappointment because the things you're expecting these women to do are not reasonable, or maybe for some of us are not healthy. So I love your point about how do we even define it? Because it is different for everyone. And a part of the art, I think, of finding our people is, am I linking up with someone who shares the same idea about what this should be?
That kind of leads to my main pain point, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this. I would say my biggest pain point in friendships is that I think that the expectation of what a friendship looks like or will look like or should be is so often wrapped up in the frequency or the execution. You know what I'm saying? Or like, well, we'll do this together. We'll spend this much time together. We'll check on each other this many times. And so my most honest pain point is this. I feel like I have a lot of love to give. I tell my friends this. I feel like I go to bed. I don't go to bed thinking like I cannot care about anyone else. I go to bed thinking I don't have 5 more seconds in the day, but I actually have a lot of love and encouragement and life to give. But I am a woman with 4 children, who is 37, who runs my own business, and who leads a local church. And I think most days I live the life of a 22-year-old whose parents are bankrolling her fun times. Like, that's how I feel. I feel like I'm trying to pretend like I'm out here like chilling and kicking it and vibing. And really what's happening is that I'm like, I've got a lot of people to take care of and like food and taxes and so I think I struggle a lot with the execution and the expectation around the execution. But my reality is I'm 37 and I have 4 kids. Like, it's really hard to make a quarterly girls' night happen, much less an every Thursday, you know?
Mm. Yeah. And you're really speaking to, so just now we were talking about the expectations we have of our friends and how that sets us up for disappointment. But now you're kind of speaking to the expectations we have of friendship that we hold ourselves to that set us up for disappointment. So if we're like, man, I should be having like my weekly brunch and I should be having and we can't do it. For some of us that is discouraging because we feel like I'll never be able to live up to that. I'll never be able to, I should be doing this. And so some of us, the expectation of what it should look like and how we are incapable of fulfilling that kind of can be discouraging. And, to the woman who's got all the things, you've got all the things going on and trying to figure out how do I work friendship in, the first thing I like to suggest is to challenge your idea of what hanging out or catching up looks like. So for most of us, for a lot of us, it's FaceTime, or face like real in-person time together. I'm going to brunch. We're hanging out for like 2 hours on a Sunday. And so if I don't have that, I'm like, well, I can't do that. And so I like to say, it's not very sexy, but I like to say, how can I layer my time? So if I know that Sunday nights are my laundry night, how can I also in that time, instead of making it a matter of finding additional hours, how can I layer what I've got? How can I also in that time tell a friend like, hey, you want to catch up Sunday around like 7? Like 30 minutes or so. I just want to hear your voice. And, I found that when you give that formula as well, it makes it more likely to happen. So if I'm including our objective, a date, and a duration, she's more likely to be like, okay, I can do that. And now we can chat. And I feel like we touched each other. I heard your voice and we checked in. There's new research that came out in February that says just 10 minutes a day on the phone. Just 10 minutes with somebody on the phone can boost your mood. So, how can I layer the time I've got? How can I invite a local friend? Hey, girl, I've got to go grocery shopping. You want to come with me and fill me in on what happened at work? Because I got to get food. And so maybe if we can readjust what hanging out looks like. For some women, it's this grand occasion. For others, I guess I could just invite her to come with me to run some errands. It's not very cinematic, but it's how we can check off some of the boxes. And so I think if we kind of challenge, okay, what's it look like to check in? Maybe we'll find that there's a little more time than we thought we had.
Hey gals, no matter where this episode finds you, if you are driving on Thanksgiving Day or just getting ready for the holidays, we want to tell you about a Black Friday deal we are offering. And honestly, we're not even calling it Black Friday anymore. We're calling it Freedom Friday. We have an online community of women called Good Body Gals, and together we work out, we move, we get body image coaching, we do tons of things together to just really stretch into the freedom that is ours for the taking. For Black Friday only, we are offering 1,000 women, the first 1,000 women that sign up, a year-long membership to Good Body Gals for just $100. That is 1 year, 12 months worth of weekly workouts, fun community bonuses, and so much more. But on top of that, when you sign up for the year-long Good Body Gals membership for just $100, we're also throwing in our e-course, the Body Shame Detox. The Body Shame Detox is usually $47. It's a 4-week video e-course to help you detox your life from all the areas that usually plague you and bring in different voices of shame. So for $100, you get a year-long membership to Good Body Gals and the e-course. We cannot encourage you enough to act fast. Again, we are only making this available for the first 1,000 women who sign up. You can go to jessconnolly.com to find out more. We'll see you in there.
I absolutely love that. Love that. Yeah. I actually am the friend who says, do you need to go to Trader Joe's? Let's go together. I also think if you're a new friend, I'll especially invite you because I think when you grocery shop with a person, it tells you a lot about them. So yeah, I love that.
I wish everyone could see how much we're all nodding our heads while we're talking. We're all like, yes, yes, more of that. Yes,
because it's so good.
Yeah.
It's so good. My brain is much like Jess all over the place because this is such a rich conversation and so needed. I think we should have part 2, 3, and 4 with you. Or maybe I'll just sign up for a session. I actually probably am. Side note. I do feel especially challenged in this season because there are a lot of things vying for my attention, for kids, full life, work, business, all the things, just all the things. But I'm going to get real personal here. And for all my friends out there, I'm not talking about you. Just going to put that out there. There are some friends that I have had over my lifetime where I feel like, again, a lot like Jess, I have a lot to give. And on the Enneagram, I'm an 8-wing-7, just to put that out there. So to give you a little bit of some background without giving you real background. Sometimes I feel like either I'm being selfish, this goes back to the whole thought of expectation, or maybe I'm surrounding myself with the wrong people. But I don't know. I guess I would love to hear you talk about how, digging deeper, I think, into the whole idea of expectation, how we find that balance in our relationships. How do we communicate that expectation? I think is probably what I really want to ask. How do we communicate that expectation? And once we've communicated an expectation, if a person is not reciprocating or respecting or honoring, it's been sufficiently communicated, how do you deal with that? I think that's kind of my sticky point with friendship, or it has been over the past few years.
Yeah, that is a tricky one. Well, first, I think it matters who are the people I'm divvying up my time with. This is not a hard and fast rule or anything. I always say research should just serve as a guideline, but there is this concept. It's known as Dunbar's number. And the gist of it is that our brain only has the cognitive capacity to maintain 5 close relationships. That's all you can handle. That if you have a romantic partner, he takes 2 of those spots. And then that's normally where a lot of women are like, oh my God, I have 3 kids. Is there hope for me? Like, I'm out of fingers. But, I think the general idea is that you only have a limited amount of space, time, energy that you can dedicate. And so if that's the case, I have to kind of choose wisely with the people who I'm really investing in. I still need those, what we refer to as loose ties or fringe friends. I need them too. But the ones who I'm carving out time for, I have to be very intentional. And so I think it starts right there. If I notice that as I'm kind of cultivating these relationships with other women, I'm being disappointed in certain ways, or there are certain expectations I have and she's not meeting them, or I'm being triggered, or whatever it is. In terms of how I tell her, I always like to kind of start with, how can I exercise an attitude of curiosity first? Because I don't know that she even is aware and I have no idea. So how can I ask more questions than make, statements? So for example, let's say if we have a friend who's like always late. I'm talking to myself right now, okay? But who's always late. And you're like, oh my God, I feel like she's taking advantage a little bit of my patience, things like that. Instead of my first approach being, you're always late, or I hate it when you're late, something like, okay, so is this a good area of town for you? Or is it kind of like far away? Should we do things closer to your house? Like, let me explore the reason that you're constantly late. Is it hard for you to find a babysitter? Are nights just not working for you? Like, what's going on? Because it might be revealed there, and then there's no need for me to kind of carry on the resentment. Or we might do what a lot of us do, where, we've been taught that anger is a very bad emotion. And so instead we're going to act like everything's fine, but that's going to manifest itself in a very passive aggressive way later, because I don't feel comfortable telling you that I was uncomfortable about that thing. And so how can you start by asking questions and getting curious first? Because the whole goal should be trying to find understanding. My goal is help me understand where you're coming from before I set my mind to being upset about that thing that you did. And so sometimes that's helpful. And then after you find that you have expressed that an expectation's not met, and keeping up with that example of her being late, the way I like to say address hard things is to address the impact of the behavior instead of the behavior itself. So instead of you're always late, that's really frustrating, it might be something like, okay, so when you roll up 20 minutes late, it makes me really anxious. Like when I wait in the parking lot for you by myself, I just get so anxious. Or I might say something like, girl, it just throws off the rest of the night, and it can be playful. Girl, you got us throwing off the rest of the plans, So after I've communicated that, hopefully she's demonstrating some kind of willingness to do better. Just like with our spouses. I tell you one time, okay, I shouldn't even say I'm fronting with you. I can't even say with our spouses because I don't give him that grace.
I was going to say, I don't know that Larry gets that because we've been married for 20 years. So a brother knows.
Yeah.
So.
I'm like, I told you one time that that should be it. Both friends, I'm like, you know what? It's going to take time. It's going to take time. So give her the same grace. But as long as I see she's trying to work it out because she loves me. And at the end of the day, she wants to love me well. And so if this is information I'm giving you to love me well, hopefully you want to step up because you love me. So hopefully, it starts there.
I'm snapping. I'm doing the.
So good. I feel like I would not be doing our listeners well if I did not ask you to talk a little bit about friendship breakups, because you have had one of the wisest voices on this area, even that you just bring it to the table and say, hey, this is statistically happening. This is healthy. And I find as a Christian woman, as a leader, as a person who has an online platform, this is so funky and I need help. And so I just would love to hear.
Can we combine cancel culture with that? Just the whole idea of friend cancel culture and friendship breakups, and those feel the same to me, or they feel connected.
Sure. Oh my gosh. Yes. So I'm wondering if the reason why, breakups themselves are hard because one, there's not enough cultural support for or cultural reverence for the loss of platonic love. So I always make the joke if I'm hanging with my girls and we have a friend who's about to arrive, and if I say, okay, guys, be careful, Tiffany's on her way, she's going through a breakup, we'd be like, oh my gosh, say no more. We're going to be really sensitive about it. If I say, hey, Tiffany's on her way, she's going through a friendship breakup, so you'd be like, what? What are you talking about? You know, so even the language and support around losing a friend, we're still kind of like, girl, come on. Like, you know, get over her. You didn't need her anyway. Like, let's move on, you know? And so I think there's not enough support to kind of grieve that or navigate that. Also, you know, especially for Christian women, I've noticed we are struggling between being nice. It's not nice to let her go. I should be long suffering, you know? And so kind of all that stuff, or, you know, what does it say about me if I feel like I need to end this friendship and she's not getting where I'm coming from, or she's spreading a false narrative of what really went down. And I'm trying to let her know, like, I'm releasing this because of this, but she's telling people it's because of this. And I can't reconcile my truth with her truth, and I don't need her out there slandering there's all that stuff. Because if you break up, she's got her own story to tell of what happened, and I have to be okay with that. I have to know I brought it up fairly. I was compassionate about it. You know, I have to be okay that I know that for myself. And so it makes it very tricky. Also, the whole friends forever mantra starts when you're really young, best friends for life. So when it gets to a point as an adult where I need to let something go, I'm trying to reconcile expectations with reality. You know, if you start to date a guy, you're like, oh, I know that there's a chance this might not work. Let's just see what happens. You never think that with a friend. You meet a woman who laughed at your joke in the Starbucks line and you're like, oh, okay, we're about to be best friends. You're not even thinking about, I don't know, it depends if this is going to work out. You don't think that. So I think all of those things make the terrain of friendship breakups very tricky and unfamiliar. If it comes to a breakup, I always like to advise, you know, there's a lot of different ways to do it. And a lot of different reasons. I hear women say things like, you know, she crossed my boundary. That kind of goes back to what we talked about before. But did I explore that with her first? Or am I not exercising enough muscle around communicating this to her, talking about it? I have my own ideas on how we throw that word around a lot. Like, well, that just crossed my boundary. You know, like, do you revisit your boundaries? Is it a boundary that was appropriate 10 years ago, but now
is it a trauma boundary?
I communicated it. Yeah, exactly. You know, who is it protecting? Is it hurting you more than it's helping you? Is it a friendship that is, you know, toxic? I know that's also thrown around a lot. So I like to help us differentiate. You know, is she just obnoxious or is she toxic? You know, if talks too loudly or she's an interrupter, that's annoying. I don't know that it's toxic, you know? And so kind of like measuring first, let's differentiate the reasons why we're letting it go. But for whatever reason, if you've decided, I think it is time to let go. I mean, honestly, if you know that it is something you're doing in a compassionate way, and you're not doing things like afterwards you're telling everybody and their mom about it and trying to beat her to telling them. But if I know I'm trying to do this for healthy reasons and in a healthy way, then I have to be okay with it being over. And it being over can look like a lot of different things. Maybe I'm not really comfortable hanging out with her one-on-one and doing our weekly catch-ups anymore, but I'm okay if she's there in a group setting and we're all at, and that's totally fine. So we have to kind of play around with, what does ending a friendship look like? Does it mean adjusting what y'all's normal dynamics are? Does it mean I'm cutting her out of my life because of something that transpired? You know, so you have options. It doesn't always have to go from, she did that thing, it ticked me off, I think I'm done with her. And then the last thing I would say too, before you make that decision, is how much of what you're operating on was totally self-generated. Because I will say, I think a lot of female friendships end prematurely because we are operating on a message we told ourselves. And you're like, oh, so she probably did that because she thinks da 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 da. Did you even ask her? Like, you made that up. I know I'm guilty, making up all kinds of creative stories, you know, and didn't even allow her to participate in the conversation. And I took some action based on a story I told myself. So, you know, friendship breakups are really hard, but they're necessary. Research tells us that we replace half of our friends every 7 years. So you can't be totally surprised. It's going to happen. I think it just is a matter of how to do it graciously.
I'm literally like counting in my head as you say that. I'm like, 1, 2, 3.
So that means, like, if you do the math, it's like, I always like to say, okay, so where were you in 2014? Who were your top 4 girls in 2014? And how many of them are with you now, you know?
And thank God, like, to some degree, right? Like, thank God for me and thank God for them. Like, I wasn't their best life now. I wasn't their cup of tea. And yeah, thank God we grow and change. In general, I am so grateful for your work. And just lastly, I want to encourage anyone to follow you on TikTok, because I do not have TikTok, but I know that you are creating like quite a wave and shepherding so many people to freedom there. And so if you are on the tiki-taki, as I tell my children, that's what I call it.
I cannot stop it.
If you are on TikTok, I mean, they've got to follow you. They've got to follow you on the gram too. But I know that TikTok like is wild and beautiful waves are happening there.
Yeah. TikTok is really fun. I think I was embarrassed to share I was on there like a year ago, but now it's a part of the brand, you know? Yeah, so over on TikTok, it's at The Friendship Expert, and it's just a mix of quick 60-second bite videos. So whether we're talking about how to start a conversation with someone new, or we're talking about, 3 ways to manage your frustration when you've been left out. We're trying to give a bunch of quick tips in 60 seconds or less, and it's fun, and everybody's been really supportive over there.
Well, Danielle, we are sadly out of time, because honestly, I could sit in this conversation for another 30 minutes, 1 hour, 1 hour and a half all day. But we're so thankful that you decided to join us, and so thankful for having you. One thing that we always ask our friends before we close is, in this season of life, how can we come alongside you, pray for you, support you right now?
I'll say I'll use my prayer offer for others. I think any woman who's wrestling with shame over needing help with friends and will not go and get it because she doesn't want to look a certain way, the prayer for her to have the courage to pursue support and get the community that she needs.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that shame piece is huge. So we are definitely in support of that and praying for that. We are so thankful for your voice, for the waves you are making in this area, and can't wait to sit with you again because we need to.
All right. Awesome. That sounds like a plan.
Thank you for coming.
Friends, thank you so much for joining us today. We are grateful that you were able to listen in. If you loved this episode, would you do us a favor and leave a review so other friends can find this episode? We pray it encouraged you and left you feeling equipped to run on mission right where you're at. We're super grateful for you, and we will see you next week.